Cakewalk by Rick Fawcett. What am I supposed to do now? A confused Richard thought to himself. The kind volunteer mom explained, You won. You can choose any of these cakes and take it home. Little did the grade 1 boy know, the kind lady's detailed instructions would lead to one of the most embarrassing moments of his young life. Do I have to go? Can't I just stay home with you? Richard begged. Of course, honey. Every kid has to go to school, his mom replied. Why did we have to move? For what seemed like the 100th time, Richard's mother explained. We told you. Daddy was able to get us a really good deal on this house, and this house is so close to your new school that you can walk home at lunch every day. Can I have macaroni and cheese at lunch? Of course, dear. Off you go, and I will see you at lunchtime. Richard was having a bit of difficulty adjusting to the move, but the fact that he could return home every lunch hour offered a bit of a silver lining. Leaving his classmates behind was the part he was struggling with the most, but he had adapted before, and he would surely adapt again. After all, it was the 4th move in as many years for the Fawcett family. Since Richard's dad was a real estate agent, he was always coming across deals that were too good to pass up. Their new Lakeview bungalow had a spacious floor plan, large backyard, and was located only a stone's throw away from a brand new elementary school. You're not coming with me? Asked Richard. No, honey. It's so close you can walk there all on your own. Just go through the front doors and the office ladies will tell you what class you are in. Part of the reason Richard's father was able to secure such a great buying price for the house was because the sale took place in mid-October, more than a month into the new school year. Normally, houses in this neighborhood sold in the spring or summer so kids could start the school year fresh, but the previous owners needed a quick sale. Something about a business transfer to Winnipeg. None of that mattered to Richard, though. He hated starting a new school midway into the year. Friendships had already been established, and due to his somewhat reserved nature, Richard knew he would have to work hard to penetrate a new peer group. But he was getting better at it. Practice makes perfect, and practice was something he was getting used to. Almost. As he stepped foot into the cavernous lobby of Clem Gardner Elementary School, Richard was struck by the fortress feel of the place. Despite the buzz of children and adults scurrying to and fro, Richard found the environment quite cold and uninviting. As the son of a realtor, Richard had seen more than his fair share of houses, and had developed a remarkably deep appreciation for architecture. To him, the school seemed to be chiseled from a solitary slab of concrete, and the lack of windows gave it a brutalist feel. Mustering up his courage, he made his way through the front doors and entered the office. There was nothing unordinary about the office, but the counter was quite high. Standing on his tiptoes and reaching up as far as he could, Richard rang the little brass bell. Over the edge of the counter peered the office secretary. Well, hello, little man. Who would you be? Who would I be, he thought. What a peculiar question. I am Richard Fawcett, he responded. He wanted to say Evel Knievel because what 7-year-old boy didn't want to be him in the 1970s? Welcome. Let's take you to your classroom. Together, the secretary and Richard walked down the long corridor to room 18. The hallway seemed long and it was lined with backpacks hanging on hooks. The secretary explained that each student received their very own hook and cubby for their personal items. As they approached the door to room 18, the kind office lady helped Richard hang his backpack on his hook and knocked on the thick wood door to Miss Mildebrath's grade 1 classroom. Taking a seat at the end of the 3rd row, Richard performed a quick scan of his new environment. It looked very similar to the other 3 or 4 classrooms he had called home at his previous schools. The teacher seemed like a pleasant enough lady with a very tidy desk. His previous teacher had a desk that looked like a Category 5 hurricane hit it. Organized teachers were the best in his mind because you could rely on them. They didn't drop any major surprises on their students. At least, that was what he thought until she stood up from her desk and began addressing the class. Okay, friends, it's time to line up and head down to the gym, announced Mrs. Mildebrath. Gym class was always one of Richard's favorite subjects in school. It wasn't his best subject, but he enjoyed the physical aspect, and he especially liked it when his gym teacher would pull out the climbers. Some kids were intimidated by the height of the climbers, but Richard enjoyed the challenge of climbing and balancing on equipment suspended 20 feet in the air. On the way down to the gym, Richard noticed that kids were pouring out of every crack and crevice of the school. As he descended the stairs, a colorful poster caught his eye that read, "Cakewalk." And it was at that moment he realized this wasn't going to be a normal gym class. As his class entered the gymnasium, many unusual sights and sounds flooded Richard's senses. First of all, he was struck by how many kids were in the gym. It reminded him of the boisterous crowds his mom and him would fight at $1.49 day sales at Woodward's. And the noise. Eruptive was the only way to describe it. Then he noticed something that he never expected to see in the confines of a gym. Framing all four walls of the gym were numerous tables displaying an endless array of cakes. Suddenly, music began to flood the air, and in unison, 600 feet started moving in circular patterns. The kids were not moving in tiny circles. They were marching in step with the music around 3 giant circles. Richard started marching. After what seemed like eternity, the music stopped. Richard's attention was drawn to the stage. He observed a tall man with a bushy mustache rolling an old metal drum. After 2 or 3 turns of the handle, the man reached into the drum through a little trap door and pulled out what appeared to be a ping-pong ball. The man leaned into the microphone and with a deep voice announced, 17. 3 students in the gym leaped into the air in a state of euphoria. It was at that moment that Richard realized the numerous pieces of poster paper that were taped to the gym floor. Each of them had a number written on them. Richard was standing on number 4. Suddenly, the music started up again, and the gym was once again on its circular stomp. The poster on the stairwell wall was starting to make sense now. This is a cakewalk, thought Richard. The song changed. Richard recognized this song, and the faster beat turned the marching into something now resembling a slow jog. Then it happened. 12, rang out the voice of the man through the gym's loudspeakers. Richard looked down to see his left foot was standing on a 1 and his right foot standing on a 2. He was frozen with a potent combination of excitement and trepidation. What do I do? He could feel himself beginning to panic inside. Just then, a friendly face appeared. "You can choose any cake you see and take it home with you," said the helpful volunteer mom. Approaching the first table of cakes was a surreal moment in Richard's young life. Never had he been faced with such a monumental choice. Obviously, Richard had seen cakes before. One of his favorite stores in Chinook Center was called Laura Secord. On those occasions when his mom took him on one of her mall marathons, he would kill time by checking out the elaborate display of exquisitely crafted cakes in the store's display case. But rarely did his mom purchase one. Now, here he was, standing in front of an endless array of homemade cakes and other creations. Then he saw it. It was magnificent. It was as if an angel herself had come to earth to bake the cake of his dreams. With a sparkle in his eye and a shaky finger, he pointed to a white frosted cake and asked, "Can I have that one?" "Of course, dear," responded the helpful parent volunteer behind the middle table. As she skirted off to assist another winner with their decision, he stood at the table marveling at his choice. Who would even think to decorate a white frosting cake with Jube Jube candies, thought Richard to himself. It was sheer genius. Every color of Jube Jube was represented on the heavenly creation, even yellow and black. Of course, the black ones would need to be removed immediately, since only his grandpa dared to eat those. And even though yellow wasn't his favorite, he decided he'd probably let those ones remain in place. With a smile a mile wide, Richard picked up the cake and headed directly out the west doors of the gym and began the short trek home. It was 9:47 a.m. "What are you doing home in the middle of the morning? And what is that?" asked Richard's mom. "It's a cake. I won it," replied Richard. But his enthusiasm began to dampen with every second he stood on the front step of the blue bungalow. "I'm so confused, honey. What are you doing home in the middle of the morning?" And with that, the reality of the situation came crashing down on the 7-year-old boy. He started to realize what a mistake he had made. And then they came, the tears. All he wanted to do was have a normal day, and now he had blown it. He could just imagine the pointed fingers and snide snickers as he returned to class after pulling such a rookie move. His mind was flooded with other memories of times he felt embarrassed in front of his peers, like the time he wore his sister's boots to school by accident and a grade 5 kid relentlessly taunted him for the entire lunch break, or the time a group of grade 4 girls made fun of him in the lunchroom over his Scooby-Doo lunchbox. Here we go again, he gulped. Okay, listen. I will keep the cake here, and you can just run back to school, suggested his mom. No way, Mom! Can't I just stay home? He pleaded. Richard knew that if he persisted enough, his mom would eventually cave to the pressure, and that's exactly what happened. With tears streaming down his cheeks, his mom's heart began to break for him. Okay, you can stay home until lunchtime, but after lunch you are going back. Do you understand? With that, the tears slowed, and Richard stepped into the safety and comfort of his new home. After a steaming bowl of Kraft dinner and a chocolatey glass of milk, his mom laid a hefty piece of cake in front of him. He picked off the sole black jube and savored every bite of the heavenly creation. With a belly full of macaroni and sugar, he felt 1,000,000 times better. His mother called to inform the school that he was safe at home, and after watching a bit of TV, he returned to school for the afternoon session. Miss Milderbrath met him at the door to the classroom to apologize for the mishap. Richard couldn't believe it was her apologizing to him. If anyone owed anyone an apology, it was definitely him, he thought. She ushered him into the class and set him up at the front desk in the center row, closest to her immaculate desk. Not a single kid glanced in his direction all afternoon long, just the way he liked it. The rest of the day was a cakewalk.